Good morning. My name is Lucia. I'm really happy to be here at ABE 2020, and I want to thank you, the organizers, for inviting me. Welcome to this talk. We will talk about kicking off an engagement with an organization. So you are agile coaches, and you have to start an engagement with a new client, an enterprise client. And what we want to discover today is how do we do that in an effective way so that we create meaningful and sustainable change for our client. I'm going to start sharing my screen so that you will see the slides, and I will introduce you to the talk, and then I will introduce myself too. So the idea of this talk came from a research that I read in the book that is linked in this slide. The research is by David Clutterbuck and Eve Turner, and it's dated back to last year. During this research, they involved 149 coaches and their supervisors, and they found out that 50% of the issues that were brought from the coaches to the supervision sessions were due to not so strong contracting phase with their clients. And this is really interesting. And it's even more interesting when I realized that only 34% is the number that coaches would the number of issues that coaches would actually link to lack of contracting or not very effective contracting. So the discrepancy between the 50% and the 34% means probably that there's some room for improvement. And as coaches, we should really be aware of what effective contracting means and how we should do that when we start with an organization. So what are the questions that we will answer today? So we look at what's our role in the first place when we enter an organization, how we introduce that to our client, and then we will ask ourselves, what questions do we need to ask our clients? What things do we need to clarify? What are the things that we need to agree and make transparent to guarantee success of our engagement, but also to guarantee to make sure that the client gets the value they want to get out of coaching. So we'll talk about mindset, we'll talk about focus, we'll talk about some tips and traps. So ideas to make that in an effective way, but also some challenges that you might encounter and that you have to be prepared to. My name is Lucia Baldelli. As I said at the beginning, I am a mentor coach and a coaching instructor. I work at Tandem Coaching Academy, which is an American school, and I am also an IC Agile instructor and a Scrum Alliance certified enterprise and team coach. I'm really passionate about coaching. Coaching changed my life, and I'm also very proud to serve Scrum Alliance as a CTC certified team coach certification reviewer. I'll leave you my contacts at the end, but let's start diving into the topic a little bit more. So how do we start an engagement with an organization? I would say the first step is to make sure that we clarify our role. In order to clarify our role in an organization, you can use this model. The model is described in the Systemic and Team Coaching book that is linked in the slide, and it describes 5 key disciplines that we need to consider when we are working with a team. So the scenario is we are engaged by an organization, and a manager or a sponsor or the team lead is asking us to work with a team to improve their performance and agility. The model describes these 5 disciplines that an agile coach needs to focus on when entering an organization for a successful team practice. It is not a step-by-step in the coaching process, but these are the disciplines where the team has to be effective so that they can achieve their goal and be performant. And the role of the systemic coach is to help the team be aware of its performance in each of these disciplines, understand the impact of these disciplines in the overall performance of the team, but also assess and continuously improve in each discipline. So we look very quickly at these 5 disciplines so that you can use this model starting from tomorrow to describe your role when you start with an organization. The first discipline is about commissioning. Commissioning means we start, so the team has to know and to contract with their stakeholders on what they have to deliver. This is about understanding what stakeholders need from the team. Do they understand who they are in the first place? What do the stakeholders demand? So this might also include coaching the team in the skill set of dialogue, negotiation with all the stakeholders, and coaching the relationship between the team and the stakeholders. This is something that too often we are not very strong at, or maybe we just go very quickly on this. And it's really, really important to make sure that the team delivers to expectation. The second discipline is about how the team will execute the strategy and the purpose and the objective. So it's about how the team is going to work to achieve the mission and how they can uniquely provide what the stakeholders want and demand from the team. But what is the role of the Agile coach in this discipline? It's basically to achieve alignment and create a shared commitment that will drive and create energy and performance. So it's all about connecting with stakeholders, creating a relationship and making sure that there is a mutual understanding of what the team has to deliver and co-creating a high-level plan to deliver those objectives. So there's a lot about planning, facilitating, and making sure that the team has the ground as a good starting ground to succeed. Discipline number 3 is about co-creating team relationships. So now we're looking at inside the team, and the team has to be performant. The team has to be able to improve team dynamics to get the work done in an effective way. In this specific area, most coaches need to pay attention if they are working systemically, and by this I mean by looking at all the interrelationship within the team, but also the influences that are coming from outside of the team. Discipline number 4 is about connecting the team. And we connect the team to engage with the stakeholders to develop a relationship that will drive improvements. Managing this relationship is responsibility for the whole team, not just the leader. So as coaches, we need to be aware that the team knows exactly who the stakeholders are, as we said at the beginning in the commissioning phase, but also they have to be able to make sure that the voice of all stakeholders is heard and that they have a good relationship with them. Discipline number 5 is about core learning, and that's really, really important. It's about consolidating the learning from successes that the team has achieved in the other disciplines, but also from mistakes that they have overcome, and use this experience to improve performance in the future. The role of the Agile coaches in this area is to create a space for that reflection and make of that reflection a valuable activity that will help the team create sustainable and sustainable change and become more resilient. So continuously learning and improving their ways of working. This model can be used to describe the role of your role as a coach to your client. But it's not the only thing we need to do. So let's start going deeper into, hey, there's multiple stakeholders that we need to deal with. Who is our client? Particularly if we are external coaches, there could be several actors that we might have to interact with. And we will have to focus on aligning expectations and making sure that everyone has the same understanding of what is expecting of coaching and what kind of work you're going to do with the team in the first place. So you will have to create different coaching agreements with different triangles. So there's you at the top, and then you might have to discuss different agreements with the team and the manager of the team. So the team will have to be aware of the work that the manager is asking you to do with the team, because we're not there to serve the manager's secret agenda. And the team has to be aware that you've been engaged for coaching. So having the manager introduce you to the team and introduce the work you're going to do with them, and creating the ground, like creating a shared understanding of the outcomes that the team is expected to achieve, is setting the basis for success. In a similar way, you will have to create an agreement with a manager and an individual, for example. If there are issues, you might have to work with individuals, and we'll talk about confidentiality in a minute, but also with the team and the individual. So you're having the relationship with the team as a whole, but then you might be coaching individual team members of the same team. And then there's the sponsor. You will have different agreements with the sponsor, which are more related to the contract itself. So being mindful of all of these aspects and all of these agreements that have to be created by you as a coach when you enter an organization is really, really important. And it's important that they all understand your role, and there's an alignment across all of these triangles on what is actually the outcome of coaching. So what is it that at the end of your engagement has to be in place that wasn't in place before? An important topic on this is confidentiality. Now, as I was saying before, you might have to have individual relationship with the people in the team and then work with the system as a whole. So you will know things that are coming from an individual that the individual might want or might not want to share with the rest of the team. But also, you don't want to find yourself colluding with individual team members if you're working with a team. Imagine you're working with a team and there's conflict within the team. If you work with individuals also, they might be telling you not very nice things about the other that they are, they don't have a very good relationship with. And you don't want to be in the position to hear bad things about others in every session you have. You will be colluding, in effect, with your clients, with your individual clients. So there's two approaches to confidentiality. And either of them is fine. They have pros and cons, of course, so it's up to you to decide which one you feel more comfortable with. The first is every conversations are confidential, and only broader themes will be shared with a wider group anonymously. So this means that if you have an individual relationship, then you'll keep for yourself what the individual is telling you. But at the same time, I would like to make sure that the individual client, to set the expectation with the individual client that I don't want to hear things that they wouldn't like other people to hear, because that wouldn't be fair. The other approach will be all data and perspectives are shared. So whatever you're telling me in an individual session is going to be shared with the rest of the team. There are no secrets. We are all working towards the same goal. So this on one side might, let's say, might discourage people to be fully open in individual sessions. But on the other side is preparing the ground for really, really focusing on what's important for the team's goal, instead of discussing issues that are not really related to the objective of the coaching. Up to you to decide which one you want to adopt. But what is the mindset? So we are contracting, we're starting with an organization, and we have to create these agreements. We've seen that there are multiple agreements, but really, what are the qualities that we need to bring to our clients when we start the contracting phase? I put some keywords here, and but I would also like to see in the chat, I know this is a pre-recorded session, but when I'll be live with you in during the conference, I want to read in the chat what's really, really important to you. There are a lot of very strong words here. What I'm really, really passionate about is go there with from a place of curiosity, of understanding what the client is going through, and openness to really hear what they want to achieve as an outcome of the coaching engagement. So there's a lot of empathy, there's a lot of clarifying, there's a lot of curiosity, there's bringing transparency and clarity about the common goal that we all have, and that will be shared across all the actors involved. But there's also humanity, there's empathy, there's desire to understand, and there's focus. You're there for the client and you're fully present with the client. Here are some tips. So things that you should really be doing if you want to do an effective contract with your client. As we said, we need to be clear on what the roles are. If we're not clear on what the roles are, we're starting with the wrong foot. There might be total misunderstanding because a lot of companies are not aware of the difference between coaching and consulting, for example. So they might expect you to provide guidance or advice, but you're not there to do that. You are there to help them achieve their success as they define it, not as you define it. Clarify the goal of the coaching, second bullet point. That is about understanding what has to be in place by the end of the coaching relationship that is not in place when you start. What is it? What are some tangible outcomes? And it's really, really important to agree a measure of success, third bullet point. Because if we don't agree a measure of success, we don't really know if we have achieved what we said we were going to achieve. So having a tangible measure of success will create value for the client, will let the client understand, hey, we really got there, and will be a measure of the success of your coaching engagement. Confidentiality, as we already discussed, and there's a link to the Code of Ethics. This is something that maybe not all of you are aware of, but as coaches, we are invited to follow the ICF Code of Ethics. And there's a lot of useful information that you can find in there. That is the most recent. And then use your intuition to notice what is said and what is not said, to understand where you should really be going, what is most useful for your team, for the people you are serving to go. Some traps. Oh, if we don't understand the roles, we are in big, big troubles. We might be asked to consult and we're not there to consult. Maybe there is not enough time and we skip contracting. This is setting up for failure, guys. Outcomes are not clear or not measurable. We don't know where we are going. Team members are not aware of the new coach and not willing to be coached. So you agree with the manager, you have a very clear agreement of what success looks like for the manager. Maybe the team does not agree. Maybe they think they're already performant in that area, or they think they can do it on their own. They don't want a coach. So you have to coach a client that doesn't want coaching, and that is not possible. Individual versus systems, client-coach relationships. This means you have to manage working with individuals if you want to do that. There are some coaches who don't coach individuals if they're coaching the team. But as we said in the confidentiality slide, but setting some boundaries there and having agreement about confidentiality that is transparent could help you actually do that. Lack of clarity on stakeholders involved or influencing factors. We need to be aware, as we said at the beginning, about who our stakeholders are, or what are some external factors, organizational impediments, for example, that might hinder success. We want to hear from them because these are challenges that we might encounter later and we don't know about it. And then also having cancellation terms. So there might be a point where you actually ask yourself, is this a client that I want to coach? Particularly if you are an external coach. Like if I work with a team that doesn't want to be coached, I cannot really help here. And you might find this out later. So having cancellation terms and conditions in your contract, it's important, particularly if you are an external coach. But I would if I were an internal coach, I would also set the boundaries about how I would define a client coachable versus uncoachable. So that there's expectations from the manager or the sponsor about actually the possibility for you to do the work in the first place. And if you cannot, then what do we do? Let's move on. So here I put together a few slides about an approach that is called STORMS. It's an acronym. And the STORM is an approach to actually kick off. And each of the letters means a different keyword that you will have to consider, probably in the same order as it's showing up in the acronym. And we will look at them one by one in a few minutes. But basically, this is all about designing the end-to-end contract with the organizational client. It's about creating, understanding where the client is, defining outcomes and roles, measuring success, checking against motivation and organizational external factors, and then kicking off. Let's look at them one by one. And these are takeaway slides for you guys. These are questions that should really be in your checklist when you start contracting with your client. So on the subject, we want to know, what is the focus of our work? Why do you want to have coaching in the first place? And what do you hope to get out of coaching? On the time, we're focusing on the on not just on the length of our engagement, but also on maybe intermediate milestones or deadlines that we need to be aware of, on how often we are going to meet with the team or with the sponsor. Are we moving at the right pace? So it's all about setting the pace and defining timelines and the overall duration of the coaching engagement. Outcomes, these are the goals. These are what they have to take away from this coaching engagement, what they have to have at the end of our relationship that they don't have right now. And maybe it's just awareness, maybe it's improved performance, maybe it's I don't know, better agility as they define it. But we need to know what it is. If we don't know what it is, we're just following the flow, but we don't have a direction. On roles, we talked a lot about roles, but basically it's about clarifying, who am I? What am I here for? I'm not here for consulting. I'm here for coaching. Maybe the client doesn't know what coaching means. So it's part of your role to actually explain what it means. Maybe using the 5 discipline model that we discussed at the beginning, but also you can explain, for example, the difference between coaching and consulting, and the fact that you will be there to help them design a picture of success as they want it, and co-design, co-create with them a plan to get there, rather than telling them what to do, right? Which is not the coach job. Measure, we talk about measure a lot as well. So these are the things that these are tangible. They make our outcomes tangible, so that we know exactly if and how much our objectives of coaching have been achieved. How will you measure success? What needs to be present for you to be at the next level in this? And then there will be also a discussion on motivation. And in my view, particularly for an external engagement, like when you decide to take this client or not, understanding how much are they willing to change? Do they want to change in the first place? Or this is just about implementing a framework? I will never accept a client that wants to implement a framework, because a framework is not going to solve any organizational problem. So how much are they willing to change and challenge themselves on how they currently structure, how their processes work, or shaping their culture in a different way to help the teams achieve success as the team defines it. And then we touch a little bit on external factors and organizational impediments. We need to be aware of them. We need to really, really be aware of them, because they will influence our capability to achieve success. So having this kind of conversation at the beginning is sort of preparing you but also it's a reflection moment for the client to really think about, hey, what are some obstacles that we will find along the way for the team to achieve success and the defined outcomes. And then we start. They decide where to start from. They decide the order. They decide, let's say, they create a backlog, prioritized backlog for themselves. And then you start your engagement, but you are in such a better position rather than if you didn't do this at all. And I'll open to discussion later. I want to hear from you how this is sort of resonating with you and what is happening in your reality as well. But before I do that, let me just leave you with a couple of slides about some resources and opportunities that we can have to work more together if you if you're willing to get in touch with me and learn more about coaching. So the main books that I referenced in this talk are these two, but there's also wonderful resources here. Path to Coaching is a video program. It's a Scrum Alliance program, and it teaches coaches in the Agile space professional coaching skills. So how to structure a coaching conversation. It's an incredible resource, and I'm really, really honored that I was able to volunteer for some coaching demos and contribute to this program. You'll find it just following the link, and only the first module is $75. All the others are completely free. So this I really recommend this. And the other three are books, and they are books about coaching mindset and professional coaching. So about one-on-one coaching and how to structure a professional coaching conversation. The topic we discussed today is been extracted from my IC Agile coaching class. It's a class that I run for Tandem Coaching Academy, and I partner with Procognita to deliver classes here in Poland. So if you're interested, there's discounts for people that are participating to this conference. So feel free to get in touch with me. These are my contacts. You can find me on LinkedIn, on my website, on Tandem Coaching Academy website. And the ways I can help you with is with ICF certification. So if you're interested in following the certification path, or CTC group and individual mentoring, or IC Agile, Scrum Alliance, and ICF classes, just book your time, book my time, and let's have a chat. And I really, really thank you for your attention, and I'm open to any questions you might have.
Now we'll go to the Q&A session that is live. So please ask any more questions that you have in the Gather Room chat. And the first question that we have is that, Lucia, do you have any, because you said that it's good to have measurable and observable outcomes and measures of success. So could you give some examples of measures and outcomes useful in Agile coaching?
Hello, and thanks for having me, first of all. Anything you do should have a measurable outcome, and it pretty much depends on what you're there for, right? So imagine you have a short engagement, and I've had short engagement where there was a kickoff of an initiative with a product team, for example. The measure of success of that initiative was to have clearly role defined and assigned, a mechanism to follow up on progress, a co-created plan for success, and then a clear way to understand how the team was going to achieve that success. That could be an outcome for a short engagement with, for example, with a product team that is kicking off an initiative. If you are on a longer Agile transformation, there could be several outcomes. But I think the first thing you need to find out is where the organization wants to go and how you can support that, and link the coaching to the coaching engagement objectives, how they would know that you've done what they want you to do. If there are some initiatives that are related to training, for example, it could be an NPS score of the work you've done around training. But try and have some objectives for the teams who are going through that, and try to have some measurable criteria of how people will measure the success of your engagement. So you both know that the client and the coach are providing value to the organization. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, and that's great. And I would like to follow up a little bit. So so let's say that the company approaches you with some questionable ideas about what they want. For example, dear coach, could you please help us improve velocity for this team? We want to double velocity because we have a super urgent project and we need to double velocity. So how would you steer them to more healthy measures?
Mm-hmm. So I would try to find out what is in the velocity at the moment and co-design with the teams that have to improve their velocity, because they have to be aware of that, right? I'm not following anyone else's secret agenda of how we are going to do that. Is it feasible in the first place, so that we can set the expectation and be aligned on a target that is inspiring? It's challenging, but it's also achievable, right? If doubling the velocity is not something that they think they can achieve, then we need to have a conversation on something that is achievable for the team. And then we can define a few initiatives that will take us there and identify some intermediate measure of success. Now, I cannot come up right now with an example of that, but first I would like to question on whether the metric is something that the team believes. Ideally, should be the team to set a target for themselves instead of being imposed, because if it's too challenging, they won't buy into that simply. And then it will be about co-designing with the teams the way, so how they are going to achieve that. And then we will have some other small measures of success that will tell us if we're on track to achieve that in a longer time frame or not.
I got it. Okay, so you talked a lot about some general principles for, especially around this critical contracting phase. But could you share some specific story that is most memorable for you around the failure around this area of contracting for coaching?
So I wouldn't call it failure. I would call it opportunity to learn. And as coaches, we have loads of them every day. Maybe one thing I can mention that was a little bit of an edge for me. It was something that I didn't feel comfortable with when I was less experienced, was how to deal with strong emotions when they come up with a team. So it was difficult for me to understand when was the right moment to jump in and stop the conflict, or when I had to let the conflict just happen. I introduced that as part of the contracting. And by simply asking the team, if any conflict comes up, how do you want me to be with you? So you make that part of the discussion in a way that when conflict arises, you know what they expect from you. So even that could be part of your agreement with the team you're working with.
Yeah, thanks.
But there could be tons.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Tons of
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have more questions around this same general topic. So the next question I would like to ask from a slightly different angle. So you said something that I really liked, that it is not possible to coach someone who doesn't want to be coached. And so what do you do when the team is not eager to be coached, right? And but the company still wants you to help them in some way.
We have an open conversation about it. So why is this happening in the first place? If it's a safety issue that we need to set some confidentiality, and we need to have some discussion about what I'm going to share outside of the team, or what is going to stay within the team. If there's other issues, I don't know. We need to have a conversation about it. But coaching is powerful if people are willing to change and take responsibility for that change. If they are not, we're all wasting our time. So it's in systemic coaching, they call this a red flag that makes a client uncoachable. So I just wouldn't be able to do my job.
Okay. And this is the situation where there is a team, and let's say the people on the team have some kind of idea, and then we discussed, and you told us about what to do in that situation. But what if, for example, you are there to help a new team, to form a new team? And what would be like a minimum viable contract? Like, what would you recommend someone responsible for setting up a new team or helping a new team just create itself? What would be a minimum viable contract for such a situation?
So in the minimum viable contract, I would put 3 things that I don't think to miss in any contract. The first is about explaining my role and what I'm going, my attitude and my approach, so that everyone understands. And it's what I refer to in the 5 discipline model, right? The second one is about outcomes. It's about clarity of outcomes. This is the work we're going to do together, and this is what we're expected to achieve together. And the third one will be about confidentiality. If the team is completely new, then I would probably facilitate an exercise for them to have an agreement between them on what they need from each other to achieve success, and what kind of support they want from me as their coach.
Thanks. Yeah, that's really helpful. By the way, I'm starting work with a new team now, so I'm just writing down notes about what to do with them.
Yeah, and also handle things like if things get difficult, or you start fighting, or we're not achieving our objectives, or if anything pops up that was unexpected, how do you expect me to be with you? Do you want me to challenge you? Do you want me to be more supportive? Do you want me to stop conflict? Do you want me to mirror what I see? Do I have your permission to share any observation or anything that it's like I'm observing that could be sort of hindering your success and deserves maybe a little bit of attention? It's asking for permission.
Yeah, that's really useful. So I'm wondering, I'll just. So are you familiar with, because the way you described it, it kind of rings a bell for me, and I was just curious. Are you familiar with clean language?
I am. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So can you share a few words, like how was clean language useful for you? How?
Well, I don't use explicitly clean language questions, but I use a lot of metaphors when I coach, particularly individual coaching, but they're also useful anytime with teams. And they're useful for a reason, because they help express concepts that are hard to explain in simple words. And they allow you to access a space that is very deep, and when there's potential to understand more deeply what's going on for your client, team client or individual client. By just staying in the metaphor and understanding what the metaphor represents for the client, and then expanding it to help the client think beyond their current thinking, you could get really, really good, powerful results.
Interesting. And so when you use metaphor and you help people understand like more deeply their situation and help them expand their view of the situation, what happens then typically?
There's new awareness. So they look at things from different perspectives. They access deepest part of their thinking. So they have more chances to become aware of something they didn't know, or maybe they weren't clear about. And then from awareness comes change, right? Then suddenly there's the light bulb, and they suddenly know what they have to do to succeed in their situation, whatever they are bringing to the coaching session.
And there's a light bulb, and so some change can happen. And is there anything else that is necessary for this change to happen?
Well, desire to make it happen, right? As we said before, you cannot tell to someone, go to the doctor because you're ill. Going for coaching is the same thing. You go to a coach if you want to change, you really think you need coaching support. Otherwise, no one can force you to go to the doctor, right? Now, doctors and coaches are very different things, but the pre-requirement is determination and desire to change, and having control of the change. We cannot change the pandemic, okay? Or we cannot change someone else's behavior, but we can change what we do to have a better relationship with that person. And this is what is going to be our discussion. So we cannot change people outside of the room when we are coaching on something that is not in our control, but we can definitely change the way the client behaves to achieve his own outcomes or results.
So there is this one aspect is this awareness that comes from exploring it via metaphors, and another object is like the strong desire to change, that it cannot be imposed on people.
Yeah, that has to be motivation, right? How many times we've seen organizations that want to implement Agile, but then Agile means maybe having Scrum at the team level, but it doesn't necessarily mean radical changes in the organization, changes that would support agility. So maybe the motivation stops at a point, right? So how are you actually motivated to achieve this? And maybe change your organizational structure, change your processes outside of IT, or anything that would help your teams achieve this success.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. We could. I feel like we could explore this topic for a long time,
yeah.
but let's park it there. And but I have one last question. So with all your experiences and that from which your system that you described during the talk grew, from your experiences, what is your favorite like success story that's something really significant, really changed for an organization or a team or a person?
Well, it was to enter an organization that was used to coaches who were consulting. So they had the hat of the Agile coach, but in effect, they came with their own agenda, and was to enter with the mindset of the coach and hear from more than one person. You're the first one who doesn't come with his own recipe for success, but you are here to let us discover how we can achieve success.
Cool. And what happened then?
And then we rolled our sleeves up.
Okay. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot for the talk and the interesting Q&A.